Also developing tonight, the U.S. has closed part of the border near Del Rio. They're trying to stop the flow of migrants into Texas. The move blocks thousands of Haitian refugees that have been trying to enter the United States for almost 3 weeks now. They've been set up at a camp in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico. Also today, the U.S. started deporting groups of Haitians back to Haiti. 3 flights carrying deportees landed there today. The U.S. says it expects to send more in the coming days. And this satellite image shows thousands of people who have been camped under a bridge there in Del Rio. The migrants initially found other ways to cross nearby until they were confronted by federal and state law enforcement. Governor Greg Abbott says hundreds of state troopers have since moved in to guard the border at Del Rio, and they're being joined by National Guard members as well.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., a sudden wave of thousands of migrants has sparked a humanitarian crisis at the U.S. Mexico border. The Texas border town of Del Rio is struggling to cope with the massive influx of people seeking safety and prosperity in the United States.
More than 10,000 people living under a bridge. This is the scene at the U.S. Mexico border as thousands of migrants from Haiti, many of whom began their trek overland as far away as Colombia, find their long and often dangerous journeys stopped at the international bridge connecting Del Rio in Texas to Mexico's Ciudad Acuña. The situation is becoming desperate.
We now have 1/3 of the population of the city of Del Rio, Texas, in a confined space under the City of Del Rio International Bridge. So that said, I had thought that the alarm was set on Monday. This is setting the nuclear bomb alarm that this is no longer sustainable, acceptable.
Overwhelmed by the surge of asylum seekers, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security announced it will use a pandemic-related authority to immediately expel migrants back to Haiti without allowing them an opportunity to claim asylum. But with the promise of a better life in sight, migrants refuse to give up their dreams of a new life in America. I don't want to be deported. If I'm deported now, I'll die in Haiti. Why? Because there's no security in Haiti. With no better option than to hunker down and hope. Scores of people waded back and forth across the Rio Grande into Mexico to resupply, buying water, food, and diapers, before returning to the Texas side and the uncertain wait under the bridge.
The border at a boiling point, the Fed shutting down part of the area separating Texas from Mexico as thousands of migrants prepare to be sent home.
We are bringing additional resources to assist with security, migrant care, transportation, and processing.
The United States government says the process of flying migrants back to their homelands has begun.
For many of them, their home is Haiti, a country undergoing a crisis in the wake of a presidential assassination and multiple natural disasters. Local 10's Glenna Milberg is live from Del Rio with the details. Glenna.
I can confirm for you firsthand, we watched one of those flights take off just within the last hour. We are at the airport. This fire engine probably has nothing to do with the migrant situation, but this is the airport they have been flying out of today. Let me let you take a look at what that flight looked like in particular, and that was not the first. There were 3 earlier flights, all of them filled with mostly single adult men. 3 left this morning, all headed eventually for Port-au-Prince. In fact, some of those flights from this morning have probably already landed a repatriation flight. The majority of Haitian nationals, however, that we have been seeing under that international bridge have made their way there to the border, living for years likely in Central and South America, have not been in Haiti for years. Let me take you to another piece of video from today. It is, as you've been seeing the past couple of days, the river crossing at the border at Del Rio. The U.S. closed that crossing today and blocked the border. And when I say that, that means to all traffic, which legal traffic, and there's a lot of it, back and forth, business traffic and commerce and so forth. And so as they remove people from the horrendous conditions where these Haitians have chosen to wait for asylum requests, they don't want anybody else to be joining those ranks. So right now, we hear the estimate is down to 12,500, some give or take, from 15,000 at its peak. And the Border Patrol tells us there have been no new crossings overnight. Okay, next piece of video for you. This man who obviously was malnourished, sick, he was taken to the hospital. This is the kind of services that Border Patrol, the U.S., and also this local county is providing these migrants if they're sick. You'll notice that the paramedics are in full-on hazmat gear because COVID is such a high concern. And in fact, these deportations today are taking place under a U.S. law. It's called Title 42. And what that does is it allows the U.S. to actually circumvent normal asylum proceedings because of health or medical emergency like the pandemic. And that's exactly what is transpiring today. Take a listen to the Border Patrol chief in this sector who talked to us today.
We are working around the clock to expeditiously move migrants out of the heat elements and from underneath this bridge to our processing facilities in order to quickly process and remove individuals from the United States consistent with our laws and our policies.
So you see, removal is now the policy. All of those people under the bridge, hoping against hope, so desperate to try to make their asylum claims. We understand that there are families who may be able to do just that. The single adult men are the ones being deported at first. Some of the families may well get to make asylum claims and get to stay in the United States while those asylum claims go through the courts. Meanwhile, the State Department has to work with those third countries, as well as Haiti, to agree to take the Haitians that they're sending back and repatriating to wherever they had come from. That is all ongoing. Stay with us as this all unfolds. I'm Glenna Milberg, live in Del Rio, Texas, Local 10 News.
Thanks, Glenna.
Thousands of migrants crossed the shallow Rio Grande from Mexico with only what they could carry, and officials say hundreds more are coming. A growing humanitarian crisis for the United States. More than 10,000 migrants, mostly Haitian, were in southern Texas as of Friday, staying in a squalid camp under a bridge. Most of the people Reuters spoke with hadn't come directly from Haiti, but had instead journeyed through Mexico and Central and South America. Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez called on the Biden administration to take action.
This is unsustainable. This is not America. This is not the way things should be.
Buses full of Haitians arrived in Ciudad Acuña in Mexico Friday, and many of them said they planned to cross the Rio Grande. But Reuters saw hundreds of migrants waiting back into Mexico to get essentials they said they weren't getting on the U.S. side. U.S. Border Patrol says it's providing water, towels, and portable toilets. Faced with the influx, the U.S. temporarily closed the port of entry at Del Rio as traffic built up.
You're going to have to start turning around. It's no time frame.
Police officers told motorists to turn back, rerouting them to the east. Del Rio Mayor Bruno Lozano issued a disaster declaration.
This is setting the nuclear bomb alarm that this is no longer sustainable.
The chaos in Del Rio is giving ammunition to critics who say President Joe Biden's more humane approach to immigration has encouraged migrants.
For more on the crisis at our southern border, we are joined by Texas Republican Congressman and ranking member of the House Ways and Means Committee, Kevin Brady. Congressman, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All indications are the situation at the border has not gotten better. It's likely gotten worse. Is it time for someone high-ranking in the Biden administration to resign?
You know, I would think it's beyond that time. Look, this is all predictable. We've said this for months. The situation at the border is not getting better. It's not, but getting worse. And when you visit with the Border Patrol agents, they've been crying this out for months and months. Now we're seeing it happen. No one, led by this president, vice president, seems to care about the humanitarian crisis here, about the danger of these illegal migrants entering the U.S. And so far, they've managed to, by ignoring it, apparently avoid their responsibility. But we've never seen it like this in Texas. I don't think we've ever seen this, frankly, in the United States. It can't continue.
We're showing our viewers live images of that scene under the bridge in Del Rio, Texas. Your reaction to seeing all those people, an estimated 13,000 people camped out under that bridge?
Yeah, it is. It's stunning and it's disheartening. And it is, again, reminds me, I think, of all the children we saw crammed into those detention centers earlier this year. I was in Del Rio, and at the time, even though it wasn't getting a lot of attention, you were already seeing and hearing from the mayor just the number of vehicle chases, the property damage, the residents scared about, frankly, their safety in a town that hadn't been affected like this before. This was months ago. It has only worsened and, again, will not get any better. It is unconscionable that the president ignores this crisis and the danger that it presents.
Reports are Haitian migrants are going to be flown back to Haiti, but they obviously didn't just walk across the border. Have you given any thought to how the heck Haitians are getting to our southern border and who is basically running the show?
Yeah, it is difficult to tell. Two thoughts. One, they aren't coming by accident. Mm-hmm. Clearly, the word is out that there are open borders in the U.S. and this is how you access it. What we read and hear about, there seems to be different pathways that the Haitians are taking here to get to this border. No one clear path there, but no question about it. They know there's an open border here. They're willing to risk it. And again, these are dangerous journeys, especially for young women and young men. And I don't understand how this president can ignore it an hour longer.
The ongoing migration crisis along America's southern border reached a fever pitch this week as 10,000 Haitian migrants fleeing the wreckage of last month's devastating earthquake arrived at the Rio Grande and crossed into Texas. Camped under the Del Rio International Bridge, where Mexico meets the United States, migration authorities were there to meet them.
This is as bad as I've ever seen it. There is no southern border. It's pure chaos. Border Patrol agents are doing everything they possibly can. God bless them for the work that they're doing to push back against it. But there are literally thousands of migrants that have come, and there's tens of thousands on the way.
In the Texas September heat, the migrants are being permitted to remain under the shade of the international bridge while they are processed. Further south, Mexico is doing what it can to control the migration crisis. Violent confrontations between Mexican authorities and migrants are becoming more frequent here. But with the desperate refugees moving en masse, the increase in those who make it to the US border is straining an already critical migration crisis. That strain is now being felt at this focal point.
The migrants are getting agitated. The Border Patrol can't keep up with feeding. During lunchtime, the facilities, the quality of life, the standard of living is all being stretched beyond its capabilities.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has announced 400 border agents are being sent to Texas to accelerate efforts to remove Haitian migrants who surged recently at the border crossing and return them back to their homeland. The U.S. will also coordinate with humanitarian organizations on the ground where the migrants will land. Yet for those who don't want to risk forced return to Haiti once inside US territory, Mexico may be the only option left for them. This country has seen mass Haitian migration before, and the city of Tijuana, across the border from San Diego, California, with a sizable community following a 2017 migrant influx, may now be the only place that welcomes them. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, Mexico City.
Agents at the U.S. border with Mexico have begun moving thousands of Haitian migrants sheltering under a bridge in the Texas town of Del Rio. The increasingly poor conditions under the Del Rio International Bridge, which connects the Texas city with Mexico, led the Department of Homeland Security to accelerate flights to Haiti and other destinations within the next 72 hours. The DHS over the weekend said some 2,000 people were removed to other immigration processing stations on Friday as the town has been overwhelmed by an influx of Haitian and other migrant groups. The department said the transfers will continue to ensure that migrants are, quote, swiftly taken into custody, processed, and removed from the United States, consistent with our laws and policy. But many, like Haitian migrant Alex Rosier, fear returning to their homeland.
If I am deported now, I'll die in Haiti. Why? Because there's no security in Haiti. There are bandits. There is civil war every day. It's very complicated because there is no leadership in Haiti. There is
They are figuring out how to get to their final destination. They pay for their own tickets. There are volunteers to help them navigate the process, whether or not they're going on a bus or an airplane.
Benjamin, thank you. The Department of Homeland Security outlining its strategy to deal with the overwhelming number of migrants flooding the system at the southern border. A new Fox poll shows that more than half of those surveyed say they are extremely or very concerned about illegal immigration. Let's bring in Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton now. Attorney General, thank you for joining us. And I want to start with Bill Malugin reporting. He just was on the air, as you saw probably, that in the past 24 hours, 2,166 migrants were processed out of the Del Rio area to Weslaco, leaving some 13,000 migrants under the bridge, with further reporting that the Biden administration plans to deportation blitz of sorts to fly the migrants back to their home countries. Not sure how long that will take. Let me get your reaction to all of the above.
Well, first of all, this is absolutely necessary to deport these people. They're not legal. He created this crisis when he started his administration with, you can come across the border, we won't deport you. And of course, he gave Haitians temporary protected status so that they wouldn't be deported. The ones that were already here wouldn't be deported. So he's incentivized them to come, and that's why I think they're sitting on our border in Texas, because he gave that incentive and they knew it.
Meanwhile, border checkpoints in the area have been closed. Border checkpoints are in place on northbound roads, so of course, as you know, for security purposes and to stop illegal immigrants from getting deeper into the U.S. So do you think President Biden can assure the American public that before his deportation blitz is completed, that some of those migrants won't slip out from that massive encampment under the international bridge and into communities near and farther away?
No, I have no doubt that some of them are going to slip by. We don't have the resources right now to deal with the number of people crossing the border anyway and throw this into the mix. This is just another problem. We're already at record levels. Border Patrol is overwhelmed. I commend Governor Abbott for sending our DPS officers down there to help, but some of those people are going to cross in, and we're going to be dealing with those problems for potentially, months and for years.
So therefore, this right now that we're talking about is a temporary fix. How do you stop the flow, Attorney General? And is there a cutoff valve or a restrictor somewhere before they arrive at the southern border? Is there a sustainable solution here?
Yeah, I think you go back to Trump administration policies. We have increases of over 300% from just last year. Those policies of the stay in Mexico and not allowing criminals to stay and stopping this catch and release program that Biden has reinstituted, every policy that he has implemented seems to me designed to create more problems, more illegal immigration, more crime, just the opposite of what the Trump administration has done. I commend President Trump because those policies worked. These policies seem like they're designed to do just the opposite, and that's what they're doing.
And if the Biden administration were to follow former President Trump's lead on that, how soon would that message get to the migrants who are looking to leave whatever conditions they have in their countries to come here?
Look, I think if the president came out now, I think if he went to the border now, met with people, and then sent the message, hey, we are going to implement the policies that worked. The policies that I implement have not worked. We are going to go back to the policies we know have been proven. We're going to start building the wall. I think that would immediately start resonating with people, and people would realize, hey, you can't come here and just walk in our border and not be sent back.
Mm-hmm. And again, I get your point here that it would immediately resonate, but do you fear that some folks are already on the way, in progress, their journey is in progress? I mean, how do you stop them, and where do you stop them?
Yeah, and you make a good point. I don't think the Trump administration was able to stop this overnight. It was built up. It was the message was sent, and then actions have to follow the message, right? So the Biden administration would have to send the message, which potentially would stop people from starting to come, but then they would have to actually follow through on federal law and follow through on the actions that they promised if this is going to work long term. And that's what I would hope they would do, because we are all suffering. It's not just Texans. In the end, we're all going to have more drugs. Fentanyl is a very dangerous drug. We're going to have more human trafficking. We're going to have more problems.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the conditions there are on the ground. You could see it for yourself in the video. It's out of control. I mean, how concerned are you about the unsanitary conditions that will persist until the rest of these 13,000 people, these migrants, are returned to their home countries?
I'm extremely concerned about their health and safety. They're at risk. This is a dangerous way to do immigration. If we are going to do immigration, this is like the worst possible way for both the immigrants and for our country. Let's sit down and figure out how to do this the right way. If we want more immigration, then let's do it the right way. Go through Congress. Let's set up a system that is safer and doesn't create so much risk for the people that are coming across. This isn't good for them either. The only party that I know benefiting are the cartels.
So speaking of party, do you think, Attorney General Paxton, that it would be a good, not just optics, but a real good show of good faith if President Biden came down to Texas, locked arm in arm with Governor Abbott and said, we are going to get this, to take care of this, and we're going to take care of it as quickly as we can, understanding there isn't a quick fix, but we're going to do this together. Party, it doesn't matter what your party is. Do you think that would start to maybe somehow for us as a country to get a hold of what's happening there at the southern border, which is not good for any of us, as you said?
Your idea is fantastic. I would really encourage the president to do that. Let's forget the party. Let's look at what's best for America, and if we want to help some of these immigrants, let's figure out what's best for them. I would love for the president to come to the border, meet with Governor Abbott, show a sign of togetherness and unity so that we can work on these problems together, because we can't do this as a divided country. We need to do this together, find ways to compromise, and figure out ways that we can do this that are good for America and that are also good for people that we're going to allow in this country.
Absolutely. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, thank you very much for joining us.